All right. So, before we start, just take a nice deep breath and let it out. And I want you to just try to listen to this recording in focus with an open mind. And I'm Coach Bill, and I'm here to talk about finding peace and comfort, transforming your life in your own way, in your own time. And what I'm doing here today is doing an inner growth workshop, and it's all about finding peace within. And I developed this little workshop. It's a seminar workshop, whatever you want to call it. It's about, it's based on a blog that I wrote a few months ago. And I wrote this blog after going through a difficult time. It was actually right after the Orlando massacres happened. And I really felt myself be thrown off balance. And I wasn't the only one. Every single person I talked to in the days and weeks that followed just seemed to be a little bit off, or a lot off. And if you remember that time, there was one thing after another happening. And it felt like we were out of control. And even though these events, for the most part, weren't happening in our own lives, they touched our lives. And we couldn't quite figure out what we needed to do. So what I did is got back to my teachings. I had a difficult time deciding what I needed to do because I personally was completely out of balance. So as I said, I wrote this blog, and it was about just being you and how sometimes that's enough. And the feedback I got encouraged me to expand on it and develop this little seminar. And that's why I'm here today talking to you. Again, going back, I had to find my own balance and come to peace with what was going on. And to do that, I reflected on the foundation of my practice and what I teach my clients. And it's centering around the Buddhist practices of mindfulness and meditation. That's the basis of balancing the mind and the body and the spirit. And from there, we work to improve. Being balanced in the mind and the body and spirit provides health and should give you clarity to focus on your journey. So I tried to focus, and I tried to just be. But while I was doing that, I felt guilty. And I had to ask myself, is it enough to just be me? With the world seemingly in chaos, is it enough to just be me? When tragedy happens, sending thoughts and prayers can seem somewhat pointless, but everyone does it. We have this urge to want to do more. There has to be more we can do, right? When you hear someone disparaging others, talking badly about someone else, you want to lash out. It's natural. When you see a wrong, you feel the need to make it right. Just being doesn't quite seem like enough. Part of our human nature is to want to do something. We want to save the world. And I can honestly say at times, I get worried. I'm constantly looking for ways I can be the change the world needs. We all get this need, this urge, this feeling to want to do more. And with that, we just don't sometimes know what to do. That's why you see people's passions come out in places like social media. on Facebook or Twitter, on the way they respond, or the things that they post, or the things that they say, you see it reflected in the anger. We have this pent-up frustration of not being able to do more, and it's reflected in things like how people drive. There's so much road rage and anger. There's a rise in addictions, and I see it in my practice. There's so much anxiety. People are overeating, and because we're not balanced in our mind, body, and spirit, we're susceptible to illnesses. And if we stay that way for too long, we open up the possibility for even worse things to happen. Cancer, terrible rage, lashing out at others in a non-healthy way. We're all being seduced by the need to do more, and we're frustrated by not knowing what more we need to do. We want to be more politically active. We want to donate more money than we're able to donate. We want to yell and scream our opinion to whoever will listen. And with all this in mind, again, I have to reflect on my mindful practice and my teachings. I realize that this pull, this need to do more, is depleting me. It's throwing me so far off balance that it's causing me, and it causes us to do things that are irrational, to say things we don't want to say, to do things we wouldn't normally do. How many times at the end of the day do you get home and say, why did I do that? That's not normally what I would do. Or we lash out at somebody that we love just because we're frustrated. And sometimes we can't take those things back. We lose our focus and lose control of our balance. And all we need to do is breathe. But again, is sitting in silence, closing my eyes, and breathing enough? Is meditating on myself enough? It seems so selfish. It's such a selfish act, right? How can I stop worrying and stressing and hurting and striving to do more? How can I just sit and be with all this going on? But I can, because then I remember, if I am not present in this moment, if I'm not focused, then I'm not useful. If I'm not balanced in my mind, body, and spirit, then I'm not healthy. If I don't have peace in my heart, how can I be the agent for change, for peace in the world? That's the realization I come to. Then, with all of that, I have to give myself permission to say that it's enough to be in the moment. I have to give myself permission to find my balance in this moment. And with that permission, I'm able to clear my mind from the unrelenting doubt and fear that surrounds me. By saying this is enough, I give myself the opportunity to realize what I have to offer. I give myself permission to search my spirit and my mind and my heart in a peaceful way. And I give myself permission to say no. When we're asked to do things, to attend a vigil or a fundraiser or a march or whatever it might be, we give ourselves permission to say no until we're ready and we know what the right thing to do is. And most importantly, you give yourself permission to say no to the self-defeating mind chatter that says you have to do more. Give yourself permission to admit that in this crazy world, with all that's going on, I am just me. And I'm good enough because I'm just me. I'm flawed and I'm messy and I make mistakes. But I care about the people around me. I care for my fellow man and for my community and for my country, and sometimes that's good enough. I don't have to frantically try to be the savior of the world because I'm just me. I can save my world by being me. I can then look to myself and see what I have to offer, just as you can look to yourself and see what you have to offer, and I can offer a peaceful spirit. I can put out a motivating thought or an inspirational message. I can offer my true self from my heart to the people around me and thus to the world. And I can accept that there may be no one in this world who reads my message. There may be no one, not one soul, in this room or anywhere who is inspired or driven to self-reflection and mindfulness. There may be no one who cares about anything I have to say. But in this moment, in my space, I give myself permission to say, that's okay. I have to just be me. That's what it's all about. We have to find our own path. So with all this in mind, based on what I just said, there's a story that I want to read to you, and it'll put our responsibilities in perspective. And you may have heard this story before. It's about this man who went down to the beach every morning to write. He was writing his memoirs or his memories. And before he started writing, he'd walk on the beach just to clear his thoughts, to regain his focus. Early one morning, he was walking out to the beach after a big storm had passed. And he found that the beach was littered with thousands of starfish, as far as the eye could see, stretching in both directions. As he walked along, stepping over the starfish, off in the distance he noticed a small boy walking towards him. As the boy walked, he paused ever so often, and as he grew closer, the man could see that he was occasionally bending down to pick up an object and throw it into the sea. When the boy got very close, the man called out and said, "Good morning. What is it you're doing there?" The young boy paused and looked up and replied, "I'm throwing starfish into the ocean. The tide came up and washed them onto the beach, and they can't return to the sea by themselves because they're too far in. And you know what? When the sun gets high, they're going to burn and they're going to die. So I'm throwing them back into the water." The man grunted a little bit and looked at the boy and said, "But there must be tens of thousands of starfish on the beach. I'm afraid you won't be able to make much of a difference." The boy bent down, picked up yet another starfish, and he threw it out as far as he could. Then he turned and he smiled and he said, "It made a difference to that one, didn't it?" That's what it's all about. Our job in this world is to find what difference we can make in our own way, in our own space, putting things into perspective. We may not be able to make a difference about something that happens thousands or hundreds of miles away, but we can make a difference in the world around us, and that's what matters. Offering our true self, opening up our hearts in a peaceful way, and being an agent for change, for peace in this world, in our world. You can't save the world, but you can make the world a little better. In this journey, with all that in mind, my journey has taken me to the point where I'm going to be writing a book. I am writing a book. And it's about creating a peaceful life in a not so peaceful world. It's relating this story that I just told you, in my way, to the world. It's a work in progress. But it's something that I've always wanted to do, and I'm inspired to do it. But I've always held back because in the back of my mind I thought, no one would want to read it. Who's going to care what I have to say? Who's going to buy a book based on what I have to say? Well, guess what? I have given myself permission not to care if anyone reads this book. I don't have to care if anyone buys it, if anybody's inspired by it, or if anybody takes the time to just even open it. What really matters is I have to write it for me. That's what it's all about. Thank you, and I appreciate the time that you've given this.